Today we're going to continue our study of quadratics, but we're going to be talking about vertex form. So far we've looked at quadratics that are written in standard form. And standard form is the y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Vertex form is just a different way of writing the equation where we have y equals a parentheses x minus h closed squared plus k. It's called vertex form because this number right here, whatever the h is and whatever the k is, tell you the coordinates of the vertex. Few things that I want to point out. First off, this a is going to have the same properties as the a in the standard form. If it's positive, the graph opens up, giving you a minimum. If the a is negative, the graph opens down, giving you a maximum. The other thing that's important is where this is x minus h. In my vertex, it's just h. So if this says x minus 3, I'm going to use 3. If it says x plus 3, I have to use the opposite, which is negative 3. The k is going to stay the same. So if it's plus 3, it's plus 3. If it's minus 7, then it's going to be negative 7. So let's look at a few examples for Math Excel. Alright, so this example, it's going to ask me to sketch a graph, and it also wants me to include the axis of symmetry. So we're going to have to make sure that we remember to do that. And down here, it's going to tell me that I need to make the axis of symmetry a dashed line and my quadratic a solid curve. So I'm going to show you how to do both of those things after we get through this information. Here's the equation. As I said before, it's negative 3, so that the a value is telling me that this graph is going to open down. So it's going to look like a frowny face. And right here I have the information for my vertex. So this is negative 2, and again I have to switch that and use positive 2, and my k is 5. So I know that my vertex is 2, 5. So if I click over here on the graph, and I just click on it, it pops up. I can move this over, and again I want the U-shaped parabola, and I'm going to click on my vertex at 2, 5. So now I have my graph, and again down here it tells you what coordinates I'm on, so I knew that I was on 2, 5. And I need to come up with one other point to use on my graph. So I can pick any other point other than an x value of 2. So if I go over one spot, I can use 1. And I'm going to use my calculator and enter 1 into the value into the spot of the x. So I've entered negative 3, and I filled in the 1, minus 2 squared plus 5. Make sure that you use this negative button and not the minus sign for that negative 3. I get a value of 2. So the other point that I have on my graph that I'm going to use is 1, 2. So I'm going to go back to my graph, and I'm going to go to 1, 2. And now I have my quadratic, my parabola graph. Now, it did tell me to graph the axis of symmetry as a dashed line. So I'm going to take and get a line, and I'm going to make it dashed, and I'm going to click on the vertex, and then I'm going to click somewhere else to make that vertical line. So now I have my axis of symmetry graphed, and I'm ready to check my answer. And the follow-up parts are going to ask me to enter the vertex, which we previously identified as 2, 5. And the axis of symmetry is an equation, and make sure that you see here it asks me to type in an equation, and that's going to be x equals, and the value of x is 2. Now we're going to look at an example of what happens when you don't have some of your numbers in the equation. So this one, we don't have an a, which just means our A is 1. So it's going to be a graph that opens up. I have an H, but I don't have a K. So we can think of this as having plus 0 at the end to make my equation complete. So just as I did before, I'm going to take my vertex. Now this is plus 10, so I need to use negative 10. And my K value is 0. So that's going to be the vertex that I graph. And I'm going to go ahead and find some other point on this graph so that once I get ready to graph it, I have both points. So I'm going to be at negative 10. I need some other value, some other point that's going to be on the graph. So if I'm at negative 10, 0, I'm going to pick some other point close to negative 10. So let's just do negative 9. So I'm going to take negative 9 and plug that value into my calculator. And when I plug in negative 9 plus 10, that whole quantity squared, my calculator returns a value of 1. So that's going to be the other point that I use on my graph. So now I'm going to go back, and because it's kind of small, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger by clicking on this. And I need to get the U-shaped parabola tool. I'm going to go to negative 10, 0. And then I want negative 9, 1. And there is my graph. It also asked me to graph the axis of symmetry as a dashed line. So I click on the line, change it to dashed, draw a vertical line through the vertex, hit save. And now I'm going to check my answer. And once again, I'm asked to enter my vertex and my axis of symmetry as an equation. All right, hopefully this helps, and if you have any questions, ask me in class.